The Great Hall of the Galactic Council hummed with tense voices. Representatives from over 200 species sat in tiered rows, their physical forms as varied as the worlds they came from. Some floated in containment bubbles filled with their home atmospheres. Others perched on specially designed seats to accommodate their unusual body structures. At the center of attention stood Council Leader Grell, a tall being with silvery skin that reflected the hall's soft blue lighting. His 4 eyes blinked in sequence as he raised all 3 of his arms for silence. "The Council has reached a decision," Grell announced, his translator device converting his clicking speech into the standard galactic language. "The Arena Combat Tournament will continue its 10,000-year tradition, but with one significant change." The crowd stirred. The tournament was among the oldest and most prestigious competitions in the galaxy. Species sent their champions to fight for honor, resources, and political advantage. For many warlike species, it was the only acceptable outlet for their aggressive tendencies. Effective immediately, all manufactured weapons are banned from the arena. Competitors will rely solely on their natural abilities. Chaos erupted. The Volari delegation, insectoid beings known for their mastery of energy weapons, buzzed in outrage. The Grax representatives pounded their fists on their consoles, their gray skin flushing purple with anger. "This is outrageous," shouted the Grax ambassador. "Our sonic technology is part of our cultural heritage." The Krell warrior diplomat rose to his full 8-foot height, his armored exoskeleton gleaming under the lights. "Without our traditional battle axes, how will we demonstrate our superior combat techniques?" Amid the uproar, Admiral Tom Davis, the human representative, sat quietly. He was a stocky man with short gray hair and the weathered face of someone who had seen combat firsthand. Unlike the others, he made no protest. When the noise subsided enough for him to be heard, he simply nodded. "Humanity accepts these terms," Davis said. The room fell silent as all eyes turned to the human. Then laughter broke out among several delegations. "Of course the humans agree," sneered the Volari leader, her translator barely keeping up with her rapid clicks. "Without energy weapons, perhaps they hope to move up from their pathetic ranking." The comment stung, but Davis kept his face neutral. Humans had joined the galactic community only 30 years ago and had performed poorly in previous tournaments. Armed with primitive projectile weapons or borrowed alien technology, human fighters rarely advanced beyond the early rounds. After the meeting, Davis was approached by Tala, a blue-skinned diplomat from the peaceful Muran people. "You accepted the weapons ban very easily," she said, curiosity in her large eyes. "Most combat-oriented species are furious." Davis smiled slightly. "Let's just say we see opportunity where others see disadvantage." "But humans have always ranked low in armed combat," Tala said. "Without weapons, what chance do you have against species with natural armor, claws, or venom?" Davis looked around to ensure no other representatives were within earshot. "What the Council doesn't understand is that humans evolved as persistent hunters who took down prey with their bare hands before they ever picked up tools. Our entire bodies are weapons. We just haven't had the chance to show it yet." Tala's eyes widened. "You mean?" "I mean," Davis interrupted, his smile growing, "that for the first time, we'll be fighting on our terms. The other species have relied on technology for so long they've forgotten what it means to truly fight. We haven't." As Davis walked away, he activated his comm device. "Get me Jack Reed," he told his assistant. "Tell him it's time to show the galaxy what humans can really do." Jack Reed stood in the training room of the human embassy, his muscular frame reflected in the mirrored walls. At 6 feet tall with a solid build, he wasn't particularly impressive by human standards, and compared to most alien warriors, he looked downright small. His short brown hair was still damp with sweat from his morning workout, and a faded scar ran along his jawline, a souvenir from his military days. "You want me to do what?" Jack asked, staring at Admiral Davis in disbelief. Davis handed him a data tablet. "You're our champion for the arena tournament. The Council has banned weapons. This is our chance." Jack scrolled through the tournament details, frowning. Sir, with all due respect, these competitors are monsters. The Krell have natural armor. The Volare can spit acid. What am I supposed to do against that? What you were trained to do, Davis replied confidently. For 20 years, you taught our most elite soldiers how to kill with their bare hands. You've studied more fighting styles than anyone in the service. Jack shook his head. Against other humans, sure. But these are aliens with completely different anatomies. Davis smiled and tapped the tablet. The screen changed to show detailed biological schematics of various alien species. That's why for the next month, you're going to study every weakness of every competitor. Where their joints bend, where their nerves cluster, how their breathing systems work. Jack's eyes widened as he swiped through the files. How did we get this information? Let's just say our intelligence division has been preparing for this opportunity for years. In the weeks that followed, Jack trained harder than he ever had before. His days began before dawn with strength conditioning, followed by hours practicing strikes against dummies programmed to mimic alien physiologies. His evenings were spent memorizing anatomical charts and watching footage of previous tournament matches. The betting markets weren't kind to Earth's chances. The odds against Jack winning his first match started at 50-1 and grew worse as fight day approached. News outlets across the galaxy mocked humanity's choice to send a soft-skinned primate against the tournament's seasoned warriors. The human competitor appears to lack any natural advantages, commented one popular sports announcer. No claws, no armor, no venom glands. What exactly is their strategy here? Jack ignored the ridicule and focused on his first opponent, Grak, a Krell warrior with an undefeated record in armed combat. Standing 8 feet tall with a chitinous exoskeleton that could deflect most attacks, Grak was considered one of the tournament favorites even without his battle axe. The night before the match, Jack sat in his quarters studying the Krell anatomy charts one final time. He had identified 3 potential weak points: the joint behind the knee, the breathing tubes at the base of the neck, and the sensory organs located under the jaw. A knock at his door interrupted his concentration. It was Tala, the Muran diplomat. "I came to wish you luck," she said, "though most think you'll need more than luck tomorrow." Jack smiled. Most don't understand what humans are capable of. Tala looked concerned. The Krell are celebrating already. Grak has been boasting that he will crush you in seconds. Good, Jack said calmly. Overconfidence will make my job easier. You truly believe you can win? Tala asked. Jack stood up, rolling his shoulders. Humans didn't climb to the top of our food chain by being the strongest or fastest, Tala. We got there by being the most adaptable, the most clever. He pointed to the anatomy chart. And by learning exactly where to hit. As Tala left, Jack returned to his preparation, a quiet determination in his eyes. Tomorrow, the galaxy would learn a painful lesson about underestimating humans. The arena was a perfect circle, 500 feet across, with walls that stretched 50 feet high. Today, it was set to mimic a rocky plain, neutral ground that favored neither competitor. 80,000 spectators from across the galaxy filled the surrounding stands, their excited chatter creating a constant buzz that echoed throughout the massive space. Jack stood in the preparation chamber, breathing deeply as he stretched his muscles. He wore only simple black pants and training wraps around his hands and feet. No armor, no technology, not even shoes. Just the human body as nature had designed it. "Final check," said Dr. Morris, the team physician, scanning Jack with a medical device. "Heart rate steady, adrenaline levels optimal. You're ready." Admiral Davis placed a hand on Jack's shoulder. "Remember, this isn't just about winning. It's about showing them who we are." Jack nodded. "I understand, sir." A tone sounded, and the chamber door slid open. Jack walked out into the arena as the announcer's voice boomed above. Representing Earth, Jack Reed, Human Combat Specialist. A smattering of polite applause mixed with confused murmuring greeted him. Most of the crowd had never seen a human in person before, and Jack's ordinary appearance clearly disappointed them. And representing the Krell Dominion, Grak, undefeated champion of the Razor Leagues. The opposite door opened, and the crowd erupted in cheers as Grak stomped into the arena. The Krell warrior towered over Jack, his chitinous armor gleaming in the artificial sunlight. Bony ridges protected his head, and his massive pincers clicked menacingly as he raised them above his head in a victory pose. Before the match had even begun, a transparent barrier separated the two fighters. The countdown appeared in holographic numbers above the arena. 10, 9, 8. Grak smashed his pincers against the barrier, the sound like thunder. "I will break you, soft one," he roared, his translator making his clicks and hisses understandable. Jack remained silent, his eyes focused, analyzing his opponent's movements. 3, 2, 1. The barrier vanished. Grak immediately charged forward, pincers wide open, ready to crush Jack between them. The crowd roared in anticipation of a quick, brutal finish. Jack didn't retreat. Instead, he watched Grak's gait carefully, noting how the Krell's weight shifted with each thunderous step. Just as Grak reached him, Jack pivoted to the side with surprising speed, ducking under the massive pincer. In one fluid motion, Jack delivered a powerful side kick directly to the back of Grak's knee joint, exactly where the exoskeleton was thinnest to allow movement. Crack! The sound echoed through the arena, followed by an eerie silence as the spectators tried to process what they'd just seen. Grak's right leg buckled beneath him, green fluid seeping from the damaged joint. The Krell warrior roared in pain and confusion as he toppled sideways. Before Grak could recover, Jack was on him. Moving with practiced precision, Jack leaped onto the Krell's back and wrapped his arms around the creature's neck, targeting the breathing tubes located there. His muscles strained as he applied a classic rear naked choke, modified for Krell anatomy. Grak thrashed wildly, trying to dislodge the human, but Jack held firm. His weeks of studying Krell physiology told him exactly how much pressure to apply and where. "Impossible," someone shouted from the stands. 30 seconds later, Grak's struggles weakened. The Krell's limbs twitched once, twice, then went still as unconsciousness claimed him. Jack immediately released his hold and stepped back. The referee, a hovering robotic entity, scanned Grak and announced, "Victory by submission. Earth." The arena remained silent for 3 heartbeats before erupting into chaos. Some spectators cheered in amazement, others shouted in disbelief, and the Krell delegation roared in outrage. As medical teams rushed to attend to the fallen champion, Jack calmly walked back toward the preparation chamber, his expression neutral despite the historic upset he just achieved. Inside, Admiral Davis was waiting, a rare smile on his face. "Well done, son." Jack nodded. "That was the easy part. They'll be studying me now." The viewing room at the Galactic Combat Academy was packed to capacity. Instructors, military officials, and tactical students from a dozen species crowded around the holographic display showing Jack's fight against the Krell warrior. The replay slowed to quarter speed as Jack executed his decisive knee strike. "There," said Professor Zill, a respected combat theorist. The 6-limbed instructor pointed with one of his upper appendages. The human targeted a structural weakness with exact precision. This was not luck. The crowd murmured in agreement. What had initially been dismissed as a fluke was now being analyzed as a masterclass in tactical combat. "The match lasted exactly 78 seconds," continued Zill. "In that time, the human made 0 wasted movements. Every step, every shift in weight was purposeful. In the 3 days since Jack's victory, the footage had become the most viewed sporting event in galactic history. Betting markets had completely reorganized, with the odds on Jack improving dramatically, though he was still considered an underdog against his next opponent, a Valeri champion named Nexith. Back at the human embassy, Jack sat in the briefing room with Admiral Davis and the tactical team. Projected on the wall was a detailed anatomical diagram of Volari physiology. Nexith has withdrawn from the tournament, Davis announced, unable to hide his satisfaction. The Volari are claiming it's due to an injury during training, but our sources say they're terrified of facing you. Jack raised an eyebrow. They're among the most aggressive species in the galaxy. Why would they back out? Dr. Patel, the team's xenobiologist, stepped forward. Because the Volari evolved as ambush predators. Without their energy whips, they're at a disadvantage against an opponent who understands close-quarters combat. Your victory against Grak demonstrated that you can close distance quickly and neutralize a larger opponent. So who am I fighting instead? Jack asked. A Dravaks warrior named Morg, Davis replied, bringing up a new set of anatomical charts. Reptilian, nearly 7 feet tall, with reinforced scales and powerful jaws. Fast, too. Jack studied the images carefully. Weakness in the throat and under the arms where the scales are thinner. Sensitive eye membranes. Poor lateral movement due to their spine structure. Davis nodded approvingly. The fight is scheduled for tomorrow morning. The arena will be sold out. News networks across the galaxy featured nothing but speculation about the human fighting style. Experts from various worlds offered theories, most of them wildly inaccurate. The truth that humans had spent thousands of years perfecting the art of fighting with nothing but their bodies was too simple for many to accept. These so-called martial arts represent hundreds of distinct combat systems, explained Dr. Patel in a press briefing. Boxing, wrestling, jiu-jitsu, Muay Thai, Krav Maga, each developed to exploit the vulnerabilities of the human body. When adapted to target alien physiologies, they become even more effective. The next day, Jack faced the Dravaks warrior in front of a record audience. The match lasted 3 minutes. Jack avoided the powerful jaws, targeted the sensitivity points under the arms, and finished with a precise strike to the throat that left Morg gasping for air. His third match against a tentacled zenith lasted less than a minute. His fourth, against a gelatinous blob warrior who normally absorbed energy weapon impacts, ended when Jack discovered that rapid, concentrated strikes could disrupt the creature's cellular cohesion. After each victory, Jack's expression never changed. He fought methodically, efficiently, without showmanship or cruelty. This professional demeanor, as much as his fighting skill, began to earn respect from the galactic community. In the human embassy, Admiral Davis received an urgent message from Earth. The Military Cooperation Office was being flooded with requests from alien governments for human hand-to-hand combat instructors. It's working better than we hoped, Davis told his staff. They're not just seeing us as warriors. They are seeing us as teachers. Jack's journey to the semifinals had transformed humanity's standing in the galaxy, from underestimated newcomers to respected combatants in less than 2 weeks. The finals, however, would present challenges that even Jack's extensive training might not have prepared him for. The emergency session of the Galactic Council was called in secret. Unlike the grand public chambers, this meeting took place in a secure room deep within the council headquarters. Only 17 representatives were present, those from the most powerful combat-oriented species. Council leader Grell looked uncomfortable as Ambassador Vex of the Volari slammed a fist on the table. This tournament has become a farce. Vex hissed, mandibles clicking in agitation. The human should be disqualified immediately. Ambassador Kroll of the Dravaks nodded his scaled head in agreement. 4 of our champions defeated. Defeated by a creature with no natural weapons. It's humiliating. Grell raised his 3 hands for silence. On what grounds could we possibly disqualify the human? He has broken no rules. The rules themselves are broken, shouted the Zenith ambassador, his tentacles writhing in anger. We banned manufactured weapons to create fairness, not to give humans an advantage. The room fell silent as the door opened and Admiral Davis walked in, uninvited. The human's expression was stern as he took an empty seat at the table. Fascinating discussion, Davis said calmly. Please, don't let me interrupt your plot to remove my species from fair competition. This is a closed session, Vex snapped. Davis smiled thinly. Yet here I am. Now shall we discuss what's really bothering you? The fact that without your technological crutches, you've discovered humans are naturally superior fighters. Superior. The Krell ambassador rose to his full height. Your champion exploits biological weaknesses. He targets breathing tubes and joint structures. It's practically anatomical warfare. Davis leaned forward. Isn't that exactly what combat is? Finding and exploiting an opponent's weaknesses. Your species have relied on energy weapons and sonic cannons for so long you've forgotten the fundamentals of fighting. Grell cleared his throat. Admiral Davis makes a valid point. The human has simply adapted better to the new rules. Then change the rules again, suggested the Dravak's ambassador. Allow natural biological advantages to be augmented artificially. Davis's eyes narrowed. You want to enhance your champions with technology to counter our natural abilities. How is that fair? The debate raged for hours. Eventually, a compromise was reached. The ban on manufactured weapons would remain, but competitors would be allowed limited biological enhancements, reinforced exoskeletons, strengthened muscle tissue, accelerated reflexes. This is blatantly targeting humans, Davis protested. On the contrary, said Grell diplomatically, all species will have access to these enhancements, including humans. Davis laughed without humor. You know very well that humans don't respond well to biological modifications. Our immune systems reject most enhancements that work for other species. As Davis left the chamber, Tala, the Moran diplomat, was waiting outside. Her blue skin seemed paler than usual. I heard what happened, she said quietly. This is wrong. Davis shook his head. It's politics. They're terrified of what Jack's victories mean. That without their technological advantages, many species aren't the warriors they thought they were. Will you withdraw from the tournament? Tala asked. Davis considered this for a moment. No, Jack fights in the finals, enhanced opponents or not. Humanity has something to prove now. Later that evening, Jack sat in his quarters reviewing footage of his potential final opponents when Davis entered with the news. So I'll be fighting genetically enhanced warriors, Jack said, his expression unchanged. How enhanced? Significantly, Davis replied. Reinforced bone structures, increased muscle density, accelerated neural pathways. They're creating super soldiers specifically designed to counter human fighting techniques. Jack was quiet for a moment. Then he stood and began stretching his shoulders. It doesn't matter, he said finally. They can enhance their bodies, but they can't enhance their fighting spirit. That takes generations to develop, and humanity has been fighting itself for thousands of years. Davis nodded, a grim smile forming. The finals begin in 3 days. Your opponent will be announced tomorrow. Whoever it is, Jack said, they'll learn what humans do best, adapt and overcome. The arena had been modified for the championship bout. Instead of the usual flat terrain, engineers had created a varied landscape of rocky outcroppings, shallow pools, and uneven ground. The commentators speculated that the design was meant to limit the human's mobility advantage. In the preparation chamber, Jack sat silently as Dr. Morris applied the last of the medical tape to his hands. His body showed the toll of the tournament. A bruise darkened his left side, and a thin scar ran across his right forearm from his semifinal match. Your opponent has been announced, Admiral Davis said, entering the room. Krav of the Draviks. They've enhanced him beyond anything we've seen before. Jack nodded, remaining calm. Show me. Davis activated a holographic display. The image showed a massive reptilian being with iridescent scales and powerful limbs. Reinforced bone structure, artificially strengthened muscle tissue, enhanced neural responses. They've essentially created the perfect fighting machine. No such thing, Jack replied, standing up to stretch. Every fighter has weaknesses. Dr. Morris looked concerned. Jack, our scans indicate his bone density is 3 times normal. Your strikes may hurt you more than him. Jack simply continued his warm-up routine. Then I won't hit his bones. When the call came, Jack walked toward the arena entrance. Davis stopped him with a hand on his shoulder. The entire human race is watching, the Admiral said quietly. Whatever happens today, you've already changed how the galaxy sees us. Jack nodded. I'm not done yet, sir. The roar of the crowd was deafening as Jack stepped into the arena. Across the battlefield, Krav emerged from the opposite entrance. The Dravix warrior was even more imposing in person, nearly 7 feet tall with rippling muscles visible beneath his scales. His eyes, modified with targeting enhancements, followed Jack's every movement. Today, human. Krav's voice boomed through his translator. Your species learns its proper place. Jack said nothing, taking his position as the countdown began. When the signal sounded, Krav moved with shocking speed for his size, covering the distance between them in seconds. Jack barely dodged the first strike, feeling the wind from the massive fist as it passed inches from his head. The crowd gasped as Krav continued his assault. Jack backpedaled, ducked, and weaved, but was clearly on the defensive. When he attempted a counterstrike to Krav's midsection, the Dravix's enhanced scales absorbed the impact. Jack winced, shaking out his hand. First blood to Krav. The announcer called as the Dravix landed a glancing blow to Jack's shoulder, sending him tumbling. Jack rolled to his feet, but Krav pressed his advantage. A powerful kick caught Jack in the ribs, launching him into one of the rocky outcroppings. The human slumped to the ground, breathing heavily. The human appears overwhelmed by Krav's enhanced abilities. The commentator noted, this could be a quick final after all. In the human section of the stands, Davis watched intently. He's studying, he murmured to Dr. Morris, learning Krav's patterns. By the third round, Jack was bleeding from cuts on his face and favoring his left leg. Krav looked barely winded, his artificial enhancements maintaining his energy levels. Disappointing, Krav taunted. I expected more from the species that defeated the Krell champion. Something changed in Jack's eyes then. He straightened slightly, his breathing becoming more controlled. What happened next stunned the audience. Jack began moving differently, more fluidly, more aggressively. He darted forward, no longer avoiding confrontation but initiating it. He targeted the same points on Krav's body repeatedly, not the armored sections, but the joints, the throat, the eyes. What we're seeing, explained the xenobiologist commentator, is a uniquely human phenomenon called second wind, a sudden burst of renewed energy when their bodies should be failing. Krav's enhanced speed began to falter as fatigue set in. His artificial muscles, designed for power, consumed enormous energy. Meanwhile, Jack, though injured, maintained a relentless pace, his natural endurance kicking in. In the final round, Jack executed his winning strategy. A feint to the left drew Krav's guard high, allowing Jack to deliver a punishing kick to the Dravix's knee. As Krav staggered, Jack leaped onto his back and applied pressure to the warrior's unenhanced respiratory system. The crowd watched in astonishment as the mighty Dravix slowly collapsed, his oxygen-deprived brain finally shutting down. The referee confirmed the victory. Jack Reed, bloodied but unbowed, had become the first human champion of the galactic arena. 1 year after Jack Reed's historic victory, the Grand Hall of the Galactic Council looked very different. Human representatives now sat among the highest tiers, a position earned through combat rather than technology or economic power. Admiral Davis stood at the central podium, addressing the assembled delegates with the confidence of someone whose bargaining position had dramatically improved. The Human Combat Academy is pleased to announce the opening of 5 new training facilities across the galaxy, Davis said. We've selected instructors from Earth's finest martial arts traditions to share our unarmed combat techniques with any species interested in learning. The announcement was met with enthusiastic approval. a stark contrast to the skepticism humans had faced just a year earlier. In the months following the tournament, human-style fighting had become the most sought-after military training in the galaxy. Even species that had once mocked humanity now sent their elite warriors to learn from human instructors. Jack Reed had become a reluctant celebrity. After his victory, he had returned to Earth for a brief period of recovery before accepting a position as head combat instructor at the new Galactic Defense Academy. Today, he stood in a spacious training hall, facing 20 alien students from 15 different species. Combat is not about size, strength, or natural weapons, Jack explained, demonstrating a basic stance. It's about understanding your body, your opponent's body, and the space between you. A young Krell warrior raised a pincer. But humans evolved as predators. Our species evolved as hive defenders. How can your techniques work for us? Jack smiled. Good question. Every species moves differently, thinks differently. What I'm teaching you isn't just how to punch or kick, it's how to adapt, how to turn your unique physiology into an advantage. He moved around the room, adjusting a Voluri's stance, showing Amaran how to use her flexibility to escape a hold, helping a zenith coordinate its tentacles for maximum striking power. In another part of the galaxy, the first interspecies combat games were underway, a new tournament created to celebrate the diversity of fighting styles. Unlike the arena, these games emphasized skill and technique rather than violent submission. Competitors from dozens of worlds demonstrated their species' traditional fighting methods, many now incorporating elements of human martial arts. The Galactic Council had formally revised humanity's classification from developing technical species to apex combat species in their official records. Human military consultants were now attached to most major planetary defense forces, and Earth had signed more trade agreements in the past year than in the previous decade. In the Council archives, researchers studied the historical records of Earth with new interest. What they found astonished them. Thousands of years of warfare, countless combat styles developed across different cultures, an endless drive to perfect the art of fighting with nothing but the human body. Their planet was a training ground, noted one Miran historian. While we were developing energy weapons, they were learning to use their bodies as weapons. While we relied on technology, they relied on technique. On the evening of the anniversary of his victory, Jack stood on the observation deck of the Galactic Center, looking out at the stars. Admiral Davis joined him, offering a rare toast with Earth whiskey. "To unexpected victories," Davis said. Jack nodded, taking a small sip. "They're already planning next year's tournament. The Council wants me to train our next champion." "And will you?" Jack was quiet for a moment. "I think I've done enough fighting. I'd rather teach, not just how to win battles, but why we fight in the first place." Davis nodded in understanding. "They're calling it the human revolution in combat theory. Every military academy in the galaxy is rewriting their training manuals." As they looked out at the vast expanse of stars, Jack thought about how quickly things had changed. 1 year ago, humanity had been dismissed as a minor species with little to offer the galactic community. Now the phrase, "fight like a human," had entered the lexicon of dozens of worlds, not as an insult, but as the highest praise. "The irony," Jack said softly, "is that we spent our history fighting each other. Now we're teaching the stars how to fight." "And how to win," added Davis, "with nothing but what nature gave us."